It felt like my soul had been someplace else for a really, really long time.
I entered into the eye of the storm of grief that I had been carrying. I began to cry.
The littlest thing would just send me into an anxiety spiral that, like, it's just one little thing. Why is this little thing ruining my day?
Eleusinia is a unique psilocybin retreat based in Mexico with a focus on meditation, neuroscience, and brain health.
I had zero doubt that this was something that I was going to go through and actually do.
That self-compassion sort of has trickled into every little part of my life.
I hadn't laughed that hard in so long.
The profoundness with which I experienced like reality, the magnitude of the beauty was just completely overwhelming.
Shannen, it's so wonderful to see you again. Thank you so much for making time for coming to the show. Can you tell our audience a little bit about who you are and why you decided to find and search out Eleusinia?
Okay, so I'm 53 and I am from America, United States. And 6 years ago, had two colliding events. And that was in 2017, in December 2017, where it really started. And then I'm going to fast forward because it's just so laborious, the 6 years. But I had a major physical trauma. At 47, I had never been sick. Maybe taken antibiotics once, like, because I can't say I didn't. And other than just having children, I'd never been to the doctor other than my checkups. And I had surgery that was botched and they nicked an artery and I ended up hemorrhaging. And I had two subsequent surgeries, ended up in the ER, hemorrhaging. It was a mess. And in the same couple days, I have a child who's 12 years old who had a traumatic event. And it was emotionally taxing and not a small one, like a major traumatic event. So physically with the doctors, and I ended up with vertigo for years. I was bedridden. I couldn't drive. I did my work in my bed. My child was actually in the room with us for 11 months. He needed to be taken care of 24/7 for 11 of those months. So we sort of triaged everything that was going wrong. It was bad. So I had to triage, like, first stop bleeding. Then we addressed the heart issues. And so we sort of started checking everything off the lists. And then I went from I was able to drive limited. I was able to work limited, but in those 6 years, I ended up with chronic vertigo. And that led me to Google and research and try and find anything or anybody. I went to go see, we counted the doctors in the 6 years. I'd been to over 80 doctor appointments. I had seen, I'm sure you've heard this, a dozen neurologists, a dozen ENTs. I saw so many specialists. And I would like to really point out that I had access to the best healthcare in our country. And not because we're special, but we have clientele that's special. And they would see me. They saw me go from strong on every level. And then they would get a peek into my life and they'd ask Bill what was wrong. And there was just a few people that knew in the beginning what was wrong. And I got fast-tracked at some of the best medical facilities in the country. And some of the best doctors saw me in the country and nobody could help me. So, they tried. It was one medication after another. Just nothing worked. Just name it, I tried it. I went in so hopeful to try anything. So in 2021, I found Jessica. I would go into those rabbit holes. Anybody with chronic pain will tell you that you kind of go in and out of these wellness spurts where I would give up, but then I'd go months with convincing myself I could get better. And then I would actually go through phases where I didn't feel like I deserved to get better. It was like really kind of strange. After 6 years, you do tend to say, this is just how I'm going to be the rest of my life. I'm just going to have vertigo. But meanwhile, I'm running a company. I have two children, one that's needed to be watched 24/7, and then a younger child that was sort of watching the whole thing unfold. And I wasn't telling anybody what happened either. So I also, in that same time frame, disappeared, like, completely. I'd used my very limited energy to take care of my children and to run my company. So I went from running every single day, working out every single day, being very involved in the community, being very connected to our clientele. I just disappeared. It was for my own good. It was for everybody's good. And there was so much fear wrapped up in leaving the house because if I'd get a vertigo attack, I had a bag packed in my car. So when I was able to drive, I'd have to pull over. I'd have to go to hotel rooms on the fly because I couldn't couldn't drive. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't do anything.
I just wanted to ask, can you express to the listening audience what it's like to have lived like that?
It is so isolating. And my superpower, I would say prior to this, which you've never even met, was connecting with people. I mean, I love people. I really do. I always have. I'm a big talker, but I'm a huge listener. I just love people. And I couldn't even have the most casual conversation. And I'm not a small talker either. I don't go, hi, are you? I mean, I really get to know people. And I couldn't even have small talk without my head spinning. I'd start holding on to things. And it hurt. Like, it was painful to talk to people. So it was very isolating. I was very alone. I fortunately am in an incredibly strong marriage and have a really strong support system. I have some very mature friends who have been through some really difficult things. And I was always the one that everyone leaned on. And then all of a sudden, even to this day, I just was like, where do I go? I was always sort of the person that everyone leaned on.
So it was a devastating shift. Who you were built to be had completely eradicated itself.
150%. Because for the first couple of years, it happened at the end of 2017. So in 2018 and 19, I was angry. I was angry. I was just pushing through. I was running that company. I was keeping one child alive while keeping the other one in the dark about what was going on. My husband was running the show in the background, trying to keep everybody spirits up and protect my heart and protect me. Because if people saw me out, because I had to go do things, I know everyone. It's a small town, and clearly something was wrong. I haven't been anywhere, but I didn't want to go into it with anyone. Really, I did that myself to protect myself, I had no option. It was like spend 5 minutes talking to these people, trying to make them feel better about where I've been and what I look like and how things have gone. Or I can spend that time trying to, raise my children and run my company.
Wow. Thank you so much for going into detail. I bet there's listeners that can really relate to that. So then you found Jessica's story.
Yes, in 2021, and just a rabbit hole. And that's the main reason I want to do this also, because this is such a deeply personal story that really only like you and Bill and now this whole podcast. In 2021, I was just in the middle. I would just go into these rabbit holes, and I found somebody, doctors just wanted to get me in, get me out. Vertigo is the pariah of symptoms. Like, doctors just shut down on me the minute I told them that vertigo was the last thing I was left with, and some vestibular, disorder that they think may have stemmed from a virus in the ER. So someone on your site put PPPD, which is just a really fancy way of saying dizzy. And that was what I was diagnosed with in 2021. And I found the retreat, and I talked to Jessica, and it was like, other than my vestibular specialist, she seemed like the only person that believed me, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? I'm not saying people didn't believe me, but it's hard to explain when you have a chronic condition in your head. So, and vertigo is also an umbrella condition, an umbrella symptom for a lot of different chronic pains that happen. It was vestibular migraines, 24/7 migraine, 24/7 dizziness. It was everything. It was anxiety. You're having a bad day. You're a woman. I was diagnosed with everything because no one could find exactly what was going on. But Jessica's story was so similar to mine. I'm not so certain that I didn't have, or I don't have, more of a similar condition to hers than anything I've ever heard of,
Okay, so then you guys decided to book the tickets and come. So what happened along with that?
So I talked to Bill about it. I would have had to have gone alone at this point, and I had, vertigo. I couldn't even drive when I first talked to Jessica, and I was still scared to and I've never. I'm the person who shakes the swing on the ski lift. It was just such a new me, and just the idea of getting on a plane and coming alone, I just couldn't do it, at that time. So as soon as I felt physically well enough, and then my husband was like, I'm going to do this with you. And I just pulled the trigger. It was one of those, I think it was 3 weeks between pulling the trigger and coming. But that's me. I knew this was if this was been on my tabs, open on my phone from the day I talked to Jessica. It was there. I signed up for your emails. I didn't really research the website because I didn't want to come with any expectation.
So you're kind of in a place where you really didn't want to have expectations because you didn't want to set yourself up.
Maybe 30 different times with 30 different doctors. That's not an exaggeration. I went wholeheartedly into so many different processes with different doctors and different regimens and different dosages of different things. I'm like, this time it's going to work. So yeah, I was worn out.
Amazing. Okay, so you finally made it, and it was a long drive. Everything about it was challenging, and I'm sure you were really glad that you had decided to come with your husband. When you arrived and settled in, were you starting to get comfortable with the process, or how were you feeling?
Well, I mean, what I want to touch on is that I always knew I was coming. I mean, after I talked to Jessica, I knew in some way, and it sounds really morose, but I knew if I lived long enough, I would get there. I knew I was going to get there. And most importantly, because I had everything weighing down on me at home, other than Jessica, the second thing that really appealed to me was, I mean, yeah, it's a fairly arduous, but it's not. Like really, it was like nothing looking back. But I needed to be in the mountains of Mexico, behind the gate, on acreage, in an otherworldly, I call it like it was like a Dr. Seuss book. As soon as we got there, it was like I was in a completely different place where I could be in a different place and not feel like the person I was for 6 years. Like I knew that as soon as I got there. Once we pulled in and I got out, I mean, I wasn't even making eye contact when we got there. I mean, I don't remember seeing you. I barely remember seeing Jessica because my head was just searing, you know? So, but getting there and meeting everybody, I mean, it was immediately, I will say I was apprehensive because my head hurt. Because my head hurt. And, you know, and I didn't want to look anyone in the eye because what if this wasn't what I was supposed to do? Or, I mean, maybe, you know, I just want to kind of get in and get out at that point. But I knew that I was at the right place and it was going to be me, not there, that was going to diminish anything about it.
Okay, amazing. And so then it's the morning of macrodose. How are you feeling for the breath work? What was happening in your head at that point physiologically?
So I know this sounds ridiculous, but when you have vertigo, it's really hard to make memories, right? So I can like give you the overall feeling, but I don't remember it. You know, it's hard to, when your head's spinning, it's hard to attach memories to things. So I was a little nervous, but not really, because it was no more dangerous than the dozen MRI machines I've been in and CAT scans and PET scans. You know what I mean? So I wasn't really nervous. I was like, let's get on with it. Let's do this. Let's fix some shit. Let's see what's going to happen, you know?
Okay, so what part of the experience do you remember?
So I remember the ceremony was beautiful. And, you know, when we first got there, Josephina and meeting her, and, you know, and I saw that there was a system put in place that was, everything was going to be very professional. I mean, the day before, if I have to, you know, backtrack a minute, like everything about that was, everything exceeded my expectations on any level. So I was like, oh, well, nothing else. We're in the mountains of Mexico in this place that is just, you know, otherworldly. So, but after the ceremony and we drank the tea, I'm pretty comfortable with visual distortions, if that makes sense, because I've sort of lived in one for 6 years. So as soon as it started to work, to kick in, the macrodose, I started to see the visuals and knew I had to get from A to B, because you guys say from the nest, you need to, you know, get to a station. So like I said, I was really comfortable with seeing things. So I knew here it comes, right? So I laid down, found a sunny spot, and everyone was trying to get me out of the sun. And I appreciate that, but I did find a sunny spot. So it was a very trying afternoon for me. And I will say that what happened was I've never been to therapy in my life. Shocker. And, you know, for lots of reasons, maybe the major one being that it just seems like a big money grab after everything else I've been through, right? But in the first, time didn't really calculate, but I would say in the first 10 minutes, I would say what would have taken 3 years of therapy came out. And it wasn't pleasant. It was very uncomfortable. It was, you don't deserve to be better if your child is sick. So that was a real eye-opener, because I don't think I ever put those pieces of the puzzle together. And it really was like the most complicated but simple and painful. And it was, and I don't cry, and here I am crying. I mean, Bill will tell you, I've cried like 3 times in my life, you know, and it was 8 hours of just crying. It was just, and it was a lot of, so the first little bit was, you don't deserve it. You don't deserve to be better. Your child's sick. And that would first it would have taken 2 years for me to find a therapist and then trust a therapist. And then it would take 2 more years for me to like open up enough for them to come to that summation. Right. And I just kept trying to push it away and push it away. I said, no, I'm not here for that. I'm here to fix my vertigo. I mean, and it was just smacking me in the face over and over and over. I mean, it was, you don't deserve to be better. And then as I finally started to let go of that, like it went through the stages of death almost. It was really crazy. And I don't know, there were several people who sat with me and I don't remember. But at one point I did have like some really strong visuals about some things that have happened in my past. And it was related to my child and being a mother. And I thought my child was sitting next to me and it was actually Emilio. And it was so comforting to have him next to me. And that sort of busted me out of that phase, what was going on, and the you don't deserve to get better part. Does that make sense? Or like 10 years down the line with conventional therapy, right? And then the rest was just I just cried. You know, y'all didn't move me. I know everyone tried to move me. I will suggest that people move. But the one time y'all tried to move me, my vertigo was just kicked up so much. It was so hard to get from A to B that I feel like I just needed to be there. And I just needed to sort of work through that. And every time I tried to maybe find some pleasure or do something, it just kept, that same situation kept meeting me there. And by the end of the intense experience, I think what I learned on many levels was I need to let go. You know, it was, I've got to let go. Mothers are martyrs. You're a mom. You know that. I mean, I'm not even saying that in a critical way. I don't mean that in a bad way either. That's essentially what we are. And I've always joked that I'm a martyr, but it did tell me that I am a martyr and that's okay. Mothers are martyrs. And I had that experience with the copperhead that I told you that came up from 2 years ago. Or
Okay, so what she's referring to, a copperhead snake. Do you want to go into that story?
I could tell it quickly. Yeah, we live in the woods. We are in the national forest. So you can expect to have every kind of animal and creature around you. And there was one day with my mother, my own mother, there was a 4-foot long copperhead and had my dogs trapped. And I called my husband, I called Bill, and I FaceTimed like how big the copperhead was. And she was trying to get under the house, like trying to burrow under the house. It was egg laying season. You know, I had the strong sense that she was going to lay her babies under my house. And she had my dogs trapped. And Bill said, you gotta kill her. And I said, that could kill the dogs, that can kill your mom who's elderly, that can kill our child. And Bill would never suggest that either. So as soon as he said, you need to kill her, I just, without thinking, I just went and got my shotgun and shot her head off. And it was something at the time where my knee jerk was pride because I felt like I protected everybody, you know, it was like, and I'd never put my shooting skills, I shoot sporting clays, that's my hobby. And I've never put it to real life use. And so I was like, oh, I got it, you know, but then immediately like the grief set in about killing something. So, and I didn't even realize how buried that was. Like that kept coming up.
And so it was all kind of associated with this inner architecture of being a mother.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that may have been something that was buried back there, but it was.
So as that day came to a close, like were you just completely blown open and still having vertigo? And how did it come to a close?
So I sat in the same place for 8 hours. And even Jessica came and sat next to me and she was saying, Shannen, you know, we really want you to have a good time too. And I was like, no, I mean, I was just intent on fixing things, right? Later, I was surprised by the pleasure involved with the whole retreat, but I did feel blown open and raw and tired. And I cried more in that 8 hours than I have in 53 years. So all at once, and my hair smelled like tears. And then Bill came, they brought Bill to me, which was, you know, really a beautiful thing because we're very close, have a really strong marriage. And this brought us closer. I didn't even know we could be brought closer. It was like almost bizarre. God. And I think that Jessica just saw the look and just everything so intuitive there. It's like, you guys know what to do. And she knew we needed to be away. She just said, do you want dinner in your room? What do you guys need? And so, I mean, we just carefully walked back to the room. They brought dinner to our room. We were able to have a private evening together to just sort of sort through, you know, my mess. So we know Bill saw the other side of the universe kind of thing, you know. And so I just needed to be with him that night. I did. I could not be around people. And it was so private. And we just had the fire and they brought us every course. And I mean, it was just, I would say that day, as excruciating as it just sounded that I made it sound, was other than having my children, was probably the most meaningful day of my life. Here we are, like, a month later, and it's the first thing I think about every morning. It's the last thing I think about at night. And was that real? That kind of thing. So yeah, every step of the way, it feels like, I'm not a group person. I'm not an activity person. I'm not a scheduled person, but I really looked forward to the next thing. Again, and I mean this, I went into everything with like an open heart, right? Because I knew that, everyone uses that ski analogy with the making new tracks kind of thing, but mine's like quicksand and sludge, my brain. So I knew something really significant had shifted, even though I was tired and I was miserable and my hair smelled and I was really out of my comfort zone for real, right? So the breath work, we can go into that, but really I want to talk about this DMT. Again, everything was such a blur until this DMT session, which I have to tell you terrified me. I want to be like, rock and roll, right? But no, I was terrified. And at the same time, I was like, put through 8 hours of hell so I can do 15 minutes. I mean, I really, truly am committed to try to I want to be better so badly, I'm willing to try anything. I mean, and like I said, I never thought of it to be any more dangerous than everything else these doctors have prescribed me and things they put me in. And so I wasn't afraid like that. I was afraid. I don't know where the fear came from. I can't put my finger on the fear, right? And why. It was just scary to me. But then I go to the session and Josephina are there. I figured worst case scenario, again, nothing, we'll just have another great night in our room together. And I first tried the glass, like the pipe, and then we moved to the vape pen. And they kept encouraging me, and I probably could tell you I was just like shaking and scared. And then for the first time in 6 years, my brain felt pleasure tingles versus that searing, like one level or another of the searing pain that I have. Because it goes from like 1 to 9, 24/7. So my brain started to tingle, like feel good tingle, not like I'm high tingle, like just a tingle. And then Jessica said, 2 more. So I took 2 more little puffs and then I laid down and I felt such pleasure. It felt so good that I was like, okay, listen, if I get this 5 minutes, let's just giving my brain a break. It was worth this, it was worth it. It wasn't scary. It was beautiful. I was comfortable. I was really comfortable. And so I laid there. I was like, can I get up now? And so Jessica said, go on, come on up. And I got up and I very hesitantly opened my eyes and the tingles were gone, but my vertigo was gone. Like the spinning was gone. I mean, it was gone. Like it was gone. It was just gone. And everything was very clear. When you have vertigo, you don't see things clearly. Everything was clear. And I know that was the DMT on top of the vertigo being gone. And also my jaw pain was gone. And all I wanted to do is like get up and find Bill, but they're like, just relax, just sit here. And I was like, oh my God, I just want to tell Bill. So they finally let me go. And I just went running across the field like a child. And I found Bill and he opened his arms up. And I'm like, it's gone. Like, I mean, I know this sounds almost unbelievable, but I mean, it's gone. And it's been a month and my vertigo is still gone. And I have collateral damage from 6 years of isolation and neck pain and some vestibular stuff that's still it's structural. It's like nothing's going to fix it. But that vertigo, when I went like running across the field to find Bill, I'm like, am I just imagining this? I mean, am I still laying down? Am I still back there with Jessica? I didn't know because I hadn't felt no vertigo for 6 years. I had not had that sense of freedom in my brain for that long. It was just kind of like another one of those, is this possible that this is gone? So yeah, it's gone. It's still gone. It's still gone. So later that I was able to, and then the rest of the retreat, I was so present. I mean, I don't know what you observed with me, but I was just so present the rest of the time. I was so excited about the meditation, which I've tried. Like I've read every book. I did the cold water everything for years. I've tried to meditate, but then I just return emails. But I mean, Emilio he spoke whatever language I needed to hear to be able to meditate. And one of the things I really miss about my old life is running, where I now feel so encouraged that I'll be able to run. But again, I'm working with doctors on the structural issues with my vestibular stuff. But that meditation gives me that runner's high that everyone says. Yeah, so I learned to do that. And then we had the cold water bath, and then we had the massages and the mini dose. And I mean, I was just all in for all of it. I was just so excited to talk to everybody there. I was like so excited to talk to people for the first time in so long. And yeah, so after that DMT session, it was like night and day. I think while I was in my macro, I was like sassy to everyone. Like I didn't want anybody, I was like, don't move me. Everybody leave me alone. And then after that DMT session, like I was excited to be around people and to suck in their energy. And there was such a great group of people there. I'm sure everybody says this about their group, but we had such an interesting, diverse group of people. And you bring everyone's soft side out. And Jay's serious, but so approachable. And Jessica's obviously the boss, and Emilio is the meditator. Tyler was so good with his instructions. And Josephina, I mean, of course, she got me over that last topic that I needed to hear, the things I needed to hear about letting go of letting my children, and I'll tell this to any mother. People post things about it. It seems really trite, but letting your children have their own autonomy and they're on their own journey. And there's just not much you really can do, other than be the best mom that you know how to be. You really can't control it. I needed to hear that from somebody else, right?
So you spoke earlier about how your memory interferes when you have vertigo. So afterwards, I'm wondering if the education about how the psychedelics work and how it was working for you started to finally sink in and what that was like.
I think the macro help with whatever is going on. There's absolutely zero question. The only thing doctors have been able to agree on is that I have inflammation. Okay. So right. So I think the macro did two things. I think that the science of it reduced the inflammation long enough for there to be work being done to my sludge, to my brain, right? It got in there. It got out some of the stuff that was really preventing me from getting better. Okay. So it's not that the vertigo was not real, but I think the macro psilocybin did the work it needed to do, that now, even if I didn't have the DMT, I think for sure I would be on the road to recovery, but not at this cadence. So with the psilocybin and it opening my mind to those opportunities, I think the DMT, it may have fast-tracked it. Does that make sense? So I think with the combination of the two, I don't think because I've worked with so many doctors with so many dosages, it's no different than when they say, take this and then take that and then take half of this and then see how you feel about that. And then come in, do you know what I'm saying? So really it's a very simple, it was a pretty simple process. It's like one thing dug out the sludge and enabled me to then actually receive the other medicine. So I think the one medicine prepared my brain for the second medicine. It really did. I'm not certain the DMT could have gotten to where it was if I hadn't had the day before. So I think that the two in combination really helped with the pain aspect.
So you really feel like the program, how it was designed, was essential. But I also heard you mentioning how you felt like just leaving your entire life and moving into this magic bubble was also essential.
It couldn't have happened any other way. There's not even a question. I mean, I don't know how typical this is, but the mothers that I know are tethered to their lives. It doesn't matter how many, trips you take. It doesn't matter what you do. I don't care what you do. You can have whatever, girls' night, guys' night, you can go bowling, whatever. You can never disconnect. I had to be in a physical space with people that I had no clue who they were. I had to be around nothing. I mean, my husband's completely different. We're like one person, really. We married 30 years. So I had to be in such a space where it didn't matter. None of it. I had to be completely out of my comfort zone in a private setting. Like the setting was unreal. I mean, it was 100 acres of just, I'd never seen anything like it in my life. And I've traveled. I've been places, so it was just extraordinary. So I don't think anything less than getting on a plane, getting in a van, going into the mountains of Mexico. And then I have to say this too, on my way back, in the van on the way back to Mexico City. I have not looked out the window of a car in 6 years with it going by without me getting sick. I got to see like the countryside of Mexico and it was so gorgeous. And then all of a sudden I was like, I'm looking out the window and things are moving and I'm not going to throw up. Like so that was just like the little things. I went and I got some groceries when I got home and I was like, oh, I was in a grocery store and I didn't throw up. And I know that sounds like ridiculous, but just doing everyday things without vertigo has been extraordinary.
Wow. So, and you spoke that you're working through all the collateral damage that you've had in the 6 years. Now, do you feel like you have the resilience and stamina to work through it post-retreat?
So I think that, first of all, I think I'll be back. I really do. I kind of want to move around next time, I want to, because I did come in with a physical condition that prevented me from doing that. That physical condition, it's gone. And you know how I know it's gone? Because it's gone. So I have not only the stamina, I have the hope. I feel like I actually think I might be able to run again. I have shared this experience with a couple of my doctors who work with me. And so we're integrating the progress I made there with what they're doing now with me. Because I fast forwarded however much. I mean, I may never have gotten to this point. Man, I tried everything else. So yeah, so I definitely feel I'm on top of the stamina. I have the hope and I now know it can happen. Like I know I can get better.
Shannen, is there anything else that you wanted to mention that we didn't get to go into?
All right, like all of it, every bit of this retreat blew my mind. I've said this and I'll say it again and I mean it, and Bill would agree with me, other than the birth of our children. It was the most meaningful. We made the largest transition in our life with this 4 or 5 days being there. And you guys obviously played no small part. Your entire program was flawless, especially for people like me, in pain, cynical, hopeful, tired, like all those things. And I just will say too, like I would say the greatest thing that's come out of this is I'm so much less angry right now than I was before. And I came back and immediately started talking to our clients again. Yeah, I think the anger has subsided and it's been replaced with a lot of hope and meditations.
Thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your experience. And I just wish you so much that old amazing self that just loves to listen to people continues to thrive. And then you getting your running back and all the growth and motherhood you spoke of, I do deeply relate to. So
I'm sorry I started to boohoo about that. I can't even get into it. I didn't even know. But Bill did say, he pressed that there's another Shannen out there. There might be somebody out there that has any of these symptoms and is just struggling with it. It's a pretty broad spectrum what I went through. And I would just say every bit of it was very comfortable. And I'm so grateful for you guys. You're just on my long list of people that I just really will never forget. And I know you guys will have the next dozen boohooers, whatever next week or whatever it is, but this entire program will be imprinted on our hearts like forever.
Thank you all so much for listening. You can find all the information that you need to learn everything about this retreat on eleusiniaretreat.com. We are a retreat that offers ongoing integration support, breathwork classes, and cultivation support after you have attended this retreat. It's an amazing experience that's one of its kind. If you're looking for a science-based retreat, something out of the box, something to change your life, something to add to your practice, this is where you really need to start, eleusiniaretreat.com.